What if I told you that your emotions, the very storms you've been taught to hide, suppress, or deny, are not weaknesses at all, but weapons. Not weapons meant to harm others, but forces capable of carving out a strength so unshakable that the world cannot bend you. We've been conditioned to believe that being dangerous is something external. Power, money, dominance. But what if the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest, the richest, or the strongest? What if it's the one who knows how to wield their emotions without being consumed by them? To be emotionally dangerous is not to lose control, it is to have mastered it. It is the quiet man who cannot be provoked, the woman who cannot be manipulated, the soul that cannot be broken by rejection or praise. Most people spend their lives at the mercy of their feelings, rising and collapsing like waves against the shore. But you, if you dare, can become the ocean itself. So ask yourself, are your emotions using you, or are you using them? We live in a world that has taught us to mistrust our own emotions. From childhood, you were told not to cry because tears are weakness, not to be angry because anger is dangerous, not to show too much love because it might make you vulnerable. Over time, you internalized the idea that your emotions were something to suppress, to hide, to silence until they rot inside you. Society measures strength by stoicism, by the ability to appear unaffected, as if the absence of emotion somehow makes you superior. Yet the truth is far more complex. The suppression of emotion does not make you powerful, it makes you predictable. People who cannot confront what they feel are easy to manipulate, because anyone who knows how to push the right buttons can control them. To deny your emotions is to deny the deepest part of your humanity, and in doing so, you hand over the keys to your inner kingdom to those who are not afraid to wield theirs. The misconception that emotions equal weakness has been deeply ingrained in us because history itself has often been written by those who value order over depth, control over truth. Philosophers like Machiavelli highlighted how fear and perception could move masses more effectively than logic alone, and leaders throughout time have exploited emotions to maintain power. But here lies the paradox. The very thing that can enslave you can also set you free if mastered. The very thing that can enslave you can also set you free if mastered. Anger is destructive when it owns you, but transformative when you channel it into purpose. Love enslaves you when it blinds you but empowers you when it teaches you discernment. Fear paralyzes you when you let it dominate your thoughts, but strengthens you when you learn to walk through it. Emotions are neither enemies nor gods to be worshipped. They are raw energies, and like fire, they will either consume you or light your path, depending on how you hold them. The tragedy is that most people never learn how to hold them. You see it in daily life, how people collapse under rejection, how their entire identity crumbles when one person does not validate them. You see it in those who explode in anger, leaving destruction behind because they never understood how to direct that fury toward building something better. You see it in those who drown in love, who give until they are empty, and then blame the world for stealing from them. You see it in those who drown in love for stealing from them. These are not failures of emotion, they are failures of mastery. To live at the mercy of your emotions is to live like a puppet, dancing to strings pulled by circumstances and other people's actions. And yet, to cut yourself off from emotion entirely is no less a trap, because numbness is not strength, it is simply surrender. To feel nothing may seem safe, but it is the safety of a locked cage where no light enters. True danger, the kind that makes others cautious of you, lies in being able to feel fully while refusing to be enslaved by what you feel. We've been told that strength looks like a stone face, like never flinching no matter the blow, like never revealing the cracks in our armor. But that is not real strength. It is performance. The person who pretends they don't care is not stronger than the one who feels deeply. They are simply hiding. And what is hidden grows in silence until it bursts out uncontrollably. That's why the strongest people are rarely the coldest. They are those who can look their anger in the eye and use it as fuel, who can sit with their grief until it shapes them into something wiser, who can carry love without being consumed by it. They are dangerous because they cannot be provoked easily, cannot be manipulated by flattery or fear, cannot be broken by rejection. Their emotions are still alive, but they are tools, not chains. That is the distinction the world refuses to teach. because a society of emotionally disciplined individuals cannot be controlled by cheap tricks of manipulation. Think of how much of the world's power structures depend on emotional ignorance. Advertising preys on insecurity, selling you products that promise to heal wounds you refuse to face yourself. Politicians stir fear and anger because they know the emotionally undisciplined will rally behind whatever feels urgent, regardless of truth. Relationships fall apart because two people confuse dependency with love, or because pride speaks louder than patience. Emotional chaos feeds entire industries, entire governments, entire cycles of control. If you remain at the mercy of your feelings, you remain at the mercy of those who know how to exploit them. But when you become aware, when you realize that your anger can be paused, that your sadness can be endured without drowning you, that your love can be given without erasing you, you take back the power that others rely on stealing. To be emotionally dangerous, then, is not about hurting others. It is about no longer being easy prey. There is also a deeper conflict within yourself, the war between the part of you that craves expression and the part of you that fears exposure. To speak your pain feels like weakness, so you hide it, but in hiding it you let it fester until it owns you. To show your joy feels risky, so you dim it, but in dimming it you starve yourself of life. The misconception here is thinking that vulnerability and strength are opposites, when in reality they are intertwined. The strongest people are not those who never cry, but those who are not afraid of their tears. The most dangerous are not those who never feel fear, but those who can walk forward with fear at their side. The world teaches you to pick one. Either you are emotional and weak, or unemotional and strong. But the truth is that real strength comes when you dare to integrate both, when you are soft enough to feel and firm enough to match. The conflict around emotion has always been this tug-of-war between extremes, indulgence and suppression, chaos and numbness, vulnerability and armor. And every time you are pulled toward one extreme, you lose balance. To be emotionally dangerous is to step out of this trap, to refuse to play by those rules. It is to understand that your emotions are not enemies but guides, not cages but weapons, not weaknesses but mirrors. When you feel anger, you learn what you will no longer tolerate. When you feel sadness, you learn where your soul longs for healing. When you feel love, you learn where you are alive. And when you master these lessons instead of denying them, you stand apart in a world still stumbling in the dark. The conflict, then, is not whether emotions are good or bad. It is whether you will remain a prisoner to them, or whether you will step into the rare and dangerous freedom of mastering them. Think back to the first time rejection shattered you. It might have been in childhood when a parent dismissed your need for comfort, or when your first love turned their back on you, leaving you to question whether you were ever worthy. Rejection has a way of slicing into the most delicate parts of us, making us feel invisible, unchosen, forgotten. In those moments, it doesn't matter how rational you try to be, because the body remembers rejection as pain, as something almost physical. It's as if the floor beneath you disappears, and you are left dangling in emptiness. Many people never recover from this wound. They learn to beg for attention, to chase approval, to shape themselves into whatever they think will make them acceptable. But in doing so, they hand away their dignity piece by piece, believing survival depends on it. And yet, hidden inside rejection is a brutal but sacred truth. It strips away illusions and shows you whether you truly value yourself, or whether you've only borrowed your worth from others. Consider betrayal, another wound nearly everyone carries. To trust someone with your heart, your secrets, your loyalty, and then watch them fracture that trust is one of life's harshest lessons. It forces you to confront not only the dishonesty of another, but your own blindness, your willingness to ignore signs, your hope that people will be better than they are. Betrayal breaks something inside you, but it also presents a choice. Do you close yourself off forever, or do you learn to trust with wisdom? Many people decide never to open their hearts again, wearing cynicism like armor, mistaking coldness for strength. Others learn discernment, understanding that trust must be earned, that loyalty must be tested, that love without boundaries is not love at all, but a form of self-erasure. The pain of betrayal can linger like a scar that never fully fades, but scars can become reminders, not prisons. They remind you that not everyone deserves access to your soul. and that even broken trust cannot erase the value of your own heart. Think about the times anger has owned you, when words you could never take back slipped from your lips like venom. Anger, when uncontrolled, becomes a beast that devours not only your enemies but yourself. We all have memories of snapping at those we love, of slamming doors, of nights replaying heated arguments in our heads, drowning in guilt. These moments feel like proof that emotions make us weak. But if you look deeper, anger always points to something, an injustice, a boundary crossed, a dignity overlooked. If instead of exploding, you had learned to listen to that fire, it could have become clarity. The transformation comes when you stop being ashamed of your anger and start mastering it, channeling it toward building instead of burning. The person who has never lost their temper is not strong. They are simply untested. A true strength comes from walking through that fire and learning to contain it, to use it deliberately, like a sword, sharpened but never swung without reason. And then there is grief, that heavy silence that swallows the air from your lungs. To lose someone you loved, whether to death, distance, or indifference, feels like being hollowed out from the inside. Nights of staring at ceilings, mornings that feel heavier than the day before, and the unshakable ache that life will never be the same. Everyone carries grief, though most try to hide it behind distractions, behind work, behind empty smiles. But grief is a teacher in disguise. It strips away trivialities and forces you to face what truly matters. It reminds you of the fragility of time, of the depth of your own capacity to love, and of the strength you never believed you had until you kept breathing despite the pain. Transformation often hides in the shadows of grief. Those who let it break them become ghosts of themselves. But those who let it shape them become living monuments of resilience. To survive loss and keep your heart open is one of the most dangerous powers a human can carry. There are also the quiet humiliations that shape us, the subtle dismissals and judgments that make you shrink inside your own skin. A teacher's harsh words that convinced you weren't smart enough. A group of friends that laughed at your dreams, planting seeds of doubt that grew like weeds. A workplace where your efforts went unnoticed while others were praised. These experiences may not scar visibly, but they cut deep because they chip away at your self-worth slowly, almost invisibly. Over time, you may begin to believe them, to measure your value by how others respond to you. But the turning point comes the moment you realize that external validation is a currency that will always collapse. It is unstable, fleeting, unreliable. The real transformation begins when you stand tall, even when no one claps, when you speak, even when no one listens, when you believe, even when no one affirms. That is when humiliation ceases to be poison and becomes fuel. Every person alive knows what it feels like to be misunderstood, to be painted in colors that aren't yours, to have your intentions twisted or dismissed. There is a loneliness in being misread by the world, and often it tempts you to explain, to over-explain, to fight for your truth in the eyes of others. But eventually you learn that explanation is a prison, because people who are committed to misunderstanding you will never be convinced. The liberation comes when you realize you don't need to be understood to live fully, that being misjudged does not reduce your worth. This realization transforms isolation into strength, because once you stop performing for clarity in others, you begin to embody clarity within yourself. That inner steadiness makes you emotionally dangerous, because no gossip, no rumor, no distortion can uproot your truth. Others may speak loudly, but the one who holds quiet certainty always speaks with greater power. And perhaps the most universal experience of all is the battle with self-doubt. The nights you've looked in the mirror and wondered if you are enough. The countless times you've rehearsed your dreams in your head but silenced them in reality out of fear of failure. Self-doubt is the invisible chain that keeps millions enslaved, not because the world has denied them, but because they've denied themselves. This is where the most profound transformation lies, when you decide, even without evidence, that you are worthy of trying, of rising, of becoming. Every stumble becomes a lesson, every mistake a stepping stone, every fear a doorway. And once you begin to honor your worth without waiting for permission, something radical happens. The voices of doubt no longer own you. This is where relatability turns into revolution, because your scars, your rejections, your betrayals, your grief, your humiliations, and your doubts become the foundation of a presence so steady that no one can shake it. That presence is what makes you truly, deeply, dangerously alive. Awakening does not arrive like thunder. It creeps into your life quietly, in moments when you finally stop running from yourself. It begins in silence. The kind of silence that feels uncomfortable at first, the kind where the absence of distraction forces you to hear your own thoughts. For most, that silence feels unbearable, because in it they must confront what they've avoided, their insecurities, their regrets, their failures. Yet, this is where transformation lives. The solitude you once feared becomes the forge in which your spirit is refined. You learn that the absence of applause does not mean the absence of worth. And the absence of company does not mean the absence of strength. In solitude, you meet the unmasked version of yourself, the one who cannot pretend, cannot hide, cannot perform. And though at first that encounter may feel terrifying, it is only in that rawness that you begin to awaken. Scars play their role in awakening too. Every wound you've endured, every heartbreak, every betrayal has left its mark. At first, you may have seen these scars as shameful, as proof of your fragility, as reminders of pain you wished to forget. But over time, something shifts. You realize that scars are not signs of weakness, but signs of survival. They are the evidence that you were broken and yet did not stay broken. Each scar is a story that says, "I endured." Awakening happens when you stop hiding your scars and begin to carry them with dignity. They become like maps carved into your soul, reminding you of where you have been and who you have become. What once embarrassed you begins to empower you, because you now understand that strength is not the absence of wounds, but the courage to keep moving despite them. Imagine yourself standing in darkness, surrounded by the weight of everything you've lost, every disappointment, every fear. Awakening is the moment when a faint light begins to flicker, not outside of you, but within. It is the realization that no matter how dark it becomes around you, there is always a flame that cannot be extinguished. This flame is not loud, it does not demand attention, but it endures. It is the voice that whispers when everything else tells you to quit. It is the presence inside you that reminds you that survival is not enough. You were meant to live, not just to endure. To awaken is to trust that flame, to feed it with discipline, with courage, with patience, until it becomes steady enough to guide you forward. That flame is your inner worth, untouchable, immune to circumstance, waiting for you to recognize it. Awakening also comes when you stop being at war with yourself. For years you may have fought against your own emotions, resented your own sensitivity, or cursed yourself for caring too much. But the truth is, nothing about you needs erasing. It only needs refining. To awaken is to stop wishing you were colder, harder, different, and instead to recognize that your softness can be a fortress. When guided by strength, the parts of you once rejected, your tears, your fears, your longing, become sources of depth when you stop seeing them as flaws. Awakening is not about killing pieces of yourself to fit into the world's definition of strength. It is about integrating everything you are, your passion, your scars, your fire, your tenderness, into something balanced, whole, unshakable. You become dangerous not because you abandon your humanity, but because you embody it fully without letting it consume you. There is also power in the stillness awakening brings. When others expect you to react, you pause. When others shout, you listen. When others panic, you breathe. This stillness is not passivity, it is control. It is the ability to choose your response instead of being dragged by impulse. Imagine being in an argument where someone throws their worst at you, insults meant to pierce you, anger meant to provoke you. The unawakened self would rise to the bait, lose control, and feed the fire. But the awakened self remains calm. Not because they feel nothing, but because they see everything. They see that the other person is ruled by chaos, and they refuse to step into the same prison. This calm is terrifying to those who try to control you, because it proves you cannot be shaken. Stillness, then, becomes one of the clearest signs of awakening, a presence so steady that nothing outside of you can dictate your inner state. Awakening also transforms how you view solitude. What once felt like exile becomes sacred ground. You learn that you don't need a crowd to confirm your worth, that you don't need noise to prove your life has meaning. Alone, you discover the strength of your own company. Alone, you hear your truest thoughts. Alone, you begin to rebuild, not for others, but for yourself. Solitude teaches you that relationships are not meant to complete you, but to complement. It frees you from the desperation of needing others to fill your emptiness, because you are no longer empty. And once you stop fearing solitude, you stop fearing loss. People can leave, praise can fade, circumstances can collapse, and yet you remain unbroken. That independence is not coldness, it is freedom. It allows you to give love without clinging, to build bonds without chains, to walk away when dignity demands it. Ultimately, awakening is the quiet recognition that your worth was never outside of you. It was never in the validation of others, never in possessions, never in victories. It has always been in your ability to face yourself, to feel fully, to endure without breaking, and to rise without begging. When you awaken, you no longer chase the illusions that once enslaved you. You no longer beg to be chosen, no longer beg to be seen, no longer measure yourself against the fragile opinions of others. Instead, you carry a calm power, a depth that does not need to announce itself. You walk into rooms differently, you respond to life differently, and people notice, not because you are louder, but because you are unshakable. This is awakening. The moment your soul stops bowing to the world and begins to stand in its own sovereignty. The journey of becoming emotionally dangerous does not end with control, nor does it end with solitude. It ends with a revolution within yourself, a redefinition of what it means to live with power. For too long you may have chased validation, hoping applause or recognition would silence the doubts in your mind. But awakening shows you the truth. External validation is a fragile currency, easily stolen, quickly devalued, never stable enough to build your worth upon. The revolution begins when you turn inward and recognize that the strength you've sought outside was always within you, waiting to be claimed. This inner revolution is quiet, invisible to the world at first. There are no fireworks, no grand announcements. It is the subtle shift in how you walk, how you breathe, how you respond. And yet it is the most dangerous transformation of all. Because once you stop needing permission to exist, no one can control you. Emotional danger is not about becoming ruthless, heartless, or detached. It is about embodying a strength that cannot be exploited. Imagine walking into a world where rejection cannot make you beg, betrayal cannot make you bitter, and praise cannot make you arrogant. That steadiness is terrifying to those who thrive on control, because they realize their weapons no longer work against you. Society expects you to bend, to break, to bow under pressure. But emotional danger is the refusal to submit. It is the steady flame in the middle of a storm, burning regardless of wind or rain. This kind of presence changes everything. People see it, even if they cannot explain it. They sense it in your silence, in your gaze, in the way you no longer chase approval or react to provocation. You become a mirror that forces others to confront their own lack of control. And that, more than anything, is what makes you dangerous. But the true beauty of this transformation is that it is not about dominating others. It is about liberating yourself. For so long you may have carried chains of expectation, chains of fear, chains of old wounds that dictated how you lived. The revolution comes when you set them down. Not because the world gave you permission, but because you finally decided you no longer need to carry them. This is why becoming emotionally dangerous is not destruction, it is rebirth. You are not burning the world around you. You are burning the illusions within you. You are shedding the skin of the person who lived in reaction, who lived in fear, who lived for applause. And from the ashes, a steadier, wiser, freer version of you rises. Others may not recognize you at first. They may even resent your transformation, because people who once fed on your weakness will starve when you stop serving it. But you owe no apology for rising. You owe yourself the dignity of becoming whole. The call is not to numb yourself, nor to harden yourself into stone. That is not strength, it is escape. The call is to feel deeply without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to hurt without being broken. The revolution is balance. It is standing at the center of your own storms, unshaken. The scars you carry are not shame, they are proof. The solitude you embrace is not loneliness, it is clarity. The silence you keep is not emptiness, it is power. To be emotionally dangerous is to stand as a paradox, soft yet unbreakable, compassionate yet immovable, calm yet capable of fire. You are not meant to be easily read, easily provoked, or easily broken. You are meant to embody depth so vast that others cannot contain it, control it, or comprehend it. This is the quiet revolution, to be so in command of yourself that the world's chaos cannot contain you. Every revolution, inner or outer, demands sacrifice. To become this version of yourself, you will have to let go of pieces you once thought defined you. You will have to let go of the need to be liked, the craving to be understood, the addiction to constant validation. You will have to let go of the old story you've told yourself, that you are too weak, too broken, too dependent to stand alone. These sacrifices are painful because they force you to confront the truth of who you've been and who you are becoming. But every sacrifice clears the ground for something greater. When you stop clinging to what was, your hands finally open to what can be. The real revolution is not loud. It does not announce itself with noise. It moves in silence, reshaping you in ways no one sees until one day they realize the person before them is no longer fragile, no longer desperate, no longer afraid. So the call to you now is simple but profound. Choose the revolution within. Choose to stop living as a puppet of your emotions and begin to master them. Choose to honor your scars instead of hiding them, to walk in solitude without fear, to embrace silence as your ally. The revolution is not about changing the world first, it is about changing yourself, until the world no longer has power over you. To become emotionally dangerous is to become free, free from the opinions that once imprisoned you, free from the betrayals that once defined you, free from the storms that once drowned you. And in this freedom you will not need to shout, to prove, or to beg. You will simply exist as a presence that cannot be shaken, a soul that cannot be broken, a flame that cannot be extinguished. This is the quiet, unshakable, unstoppable revolution.